One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own.
Hi, warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. A victim of domestic violence encounters many people throughout the course of their abuse, and any one of those individuals could be the catalyst that changes the trajectory of that victim's life. My guest today, Susanne Shepherd Post, understands that from both a personal experience and her professional background. She founded Shear Haven, which was initially a small organization based out of Nashville, but has now reached over 100,000 professionals worldwide. Let's dive in to hear more about her mission and advocacy. Hi, Susanne. Welcome to One in Three. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much, Ingrid. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm very excited to talk about your topic because I think this is so creative, so necessary. But before we get into that, could you give just a background so we can get to know you a little bit?
Absolutely. I am so grateful for this opportunity to share about my passion project. My background is actually in the beauty world. I am a stylist and a salon owner. I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and I'm also a survivor of domestic violence. And these two worlds collided back in 2017. And I had heard about a law that was passed in Illinois. It required my industry, the beauty industry, to be educated about the signs of domestic violence. And it absolutely stopped me in my tracks and caught my attention. And it basically birthed this initiative that I started here in Tennessee. And the timing of it was interesting. I'm also a mom. I have two beautiful kiddos. And at my internal nudging after having my second child, I had let go of my bigger salon space and had actually downsized into what I thought was a much simpler world for kind of holding motherhood and my working, time behind the chair. And at that point, I believe it created that opening, that creative space that allowed me to then step into this next chapter. And I know we'll go much deeper into that, but that's the gist. I am a beauty professional / mom / wife and advocate for domestic violence awareness and education.
Which is the perfect storm to come up with your projects. So quick before we get into that, do you just get to hear all of the beauty news throughout the states, or is this something that you just stumbled upon, or how did you find out about Illinois?
Well, that's interesting. I was actually in the middle of cleaning up my closet. It was a snowed in January day, and I must have just been listening to the news. I came across a story that was just a blip on the news about this law that had been passed in Illinois. So it was interesting timing for it to just pop in front of me that way. But of course, after hearing about it, I did some research and read up a little bit more on it, and it was everywhere. It was kind of groundbreaking at that point. It was a new requirement for the industry, and I had been looking for a way as a survivor to get plugged into my community and support survivors and victims in the community in that interesting way. I had been thinking about volunteering at the local YW shelter to do hair for people that might be in shelter or moving back into the workforce. I had been to some of the fundraising events and was just looking for that right place to plug in, and had actually reached out to them about that. And I was very familiar with the statistics in Tennessee because of those events. I knew that Tennessee was pretty consistently in the top 10 in the nation at the rate that women are killed by men. And of course, knew that statistically, at least 1 in 4 women, I think more than 1 in 4 women, and 1 in 7 men would experience domestic violence in their lifetime. So I knew that in Tennessee, half of all calls to law enforcement are domestic violence related, and that it was a really big issue in our community that needed perhaps some unique ways to address it. I thought, this is so outside the box, and yet it made perfect sense to me. And so that was when I reached out to them initially and said, okay, is this something that you would like to join me in? Is this an effort that makes sense? And they said, yes, we have actually been looking for AU. We have been trying to start breaking into this world and didn't have a hair professional to actually be the face of it. And so it was just perfect timing.
That really is. It's kind of eerie, actually, how it just all fell into place exactly perfectly. So let's talk about it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what is the name of your project, and what have you done? We'll start with past and then move to present and future.
Yes. So the past, my reaching out to them back in 2017 led to us creating a curriculum together that was based in the YWs. They're the largest provider of domestic violence resources and education in our community. And so they did domestic violence 101 trainings. And I stepped in as the beauty professional to dig in a little bit deeper to the signs that our industry might be uniquely positioned to hear. And the why around our industry is because of the relationship and the consistency that we see our clients. We have people in our chair that we'll see month after month, often for decades. I have clients that I've seen since truly day one in the salon that I've now seen once every 4 weeks, some of them once every 3 weeks for now over 30 years, and have been able to build such a close, trusting relationship with them that they open up to us about everything. I have found myself, the first person to hear that someone's pregnant, that they're expecting a baby even before their husband is. I have heard about, the exciting job change, career change, shakeups in relationships, for better or for worse. The person that says, I can't believe I'm falling in love with my best friend and I haven't told anyone, it's top secret. Or I've also been on journeys with people through really difficult seasons. And of course, our relationship, it's times that people will kind of expose little bits of their story as they're ready. It could unfold over years. And so there's times that, looking back, I've had little glimpses that maybe something wasn't quite right in a relationship, but it wasn't until maybe 2 years later that they really started sharing in depth more details that were more discernible, that I was able to put into context with, okay, this was actually an abusive relationship that I was privy to that maybe nobody else was. And so the why is important because, a lot of people have asked, why not every industry? Domestic violence education should reach everyone in the community. And I agree with that. I think it's really important to spread awareness and reduce stigma, open up conversations about what the signs are so that any of us are able to support our friends in a different way. But my industry is, of course, where I am grounded. And so that is what I'm building from. And the relationship that we have is very unique and makes us really kind of that perfect ear. So we started doing in-person trainings with the YWCA, and We had our first training back in 2017 during October, which was Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we opened it up to the community at the health department. We thought, this is how we'll do it. We'll just make it a community event. It can attract anyone from any salon that wants to be a part of it. And interestingly, when we put it into a press release and reached the community with the news, we had people from other industries that showed up. We had a couple of nurses that showed up. We had an attorney who showed up, which we were thrilled with because it's very important to us that anyone who wants this information is able to receive it, even if they're outside of our industry. But very, very quickly, we realized that it might be more successful with in-person salon trainings to make it as easy for the salon owner or the stylist as possible. So we shifted from the big community event to more intimate in-person salon events. And we had, groups of 10, groups of 20 that we would go and provide this information to. And often the trainings were several hours. We would usually book it for an hour, but the conversations that would unfold were so incredible that often they ended up being 2 hours, 3 hours at times. And the response was incredible. The questions that were asked, the light bulbs that would go off, you could see people have moments of awakening where they would say, okay, I currently have a client that I could see these signs in, or looking back years ago, there was a client that I think I missed. A few really heartbreaking stories unfolded. Like one of my friends reached out and she said, I lost a client to a domestic violence incident. It was a murder-suicide. And she said, looking back, I now know after going through the training that there were some very obvious signs in front of me, but I just didn't quite know what it was. I knew something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know that it was abuse. And so as we started doing these in-person trainings, it very quickly became evident that it needed to be bigger than what we were doing there. And that's when a couple of years in, I decided to reach out to my local lawmaker and see if they would be willing to introduce legislation like we had seen Illinois pass. And he's wonderful. His name is Sam Whitson. He's actually retired from being a representative now, but Tennessee is a supermajority red state. And as I've done more work at the state level, I know that it's very important to find the right lawmaker to carry your legislation. And in Tennessee, it needed to be someone like Sam, who was highly respected and had a real heart for an issue like this. And so we started working in 2020 to introduce this legislation. And it's a windy road that we can go into, but that was kind of the condensed version of the beginning. In-person trainings, which led into our legislative efforts here in Tennessee, which ultimately have really good news, and we can go into that. But it's been an incredible journey that is so outside of my realm of understanding of how big this little seed of inspiration would grow.
And during 2020, which is, what a horrible year for so many people, but 2020 actually ended up just, I don't know if it was because of COVID or despite COVID, but just so many incredible things happened to that year.
Well, and something that COVID did is it really exposed the issue of domestic violence. There were so many people that were not safer at home. To your point, there was so much magic that happened. I think all of us were, at least temporarily, kind of brought together in a really beautiful way. And showed incredible depth of caring for each other in an incredible way. Of course, we were brought online. We didn't know how to do this before 2020, really. And it actually, as far as our legislative efforts, ended up being a huge gift in our mission. Sadly, with the increase in domestic violence, it became even more crucial to find a unique way to respond. And during the shutdown, our industry was one of the close contact industries that didn't have the ability to pivot online. We're up close and personal with our clients. And so when I was asked to be on Governor Lee's economic recovery group as the representative for my industry, I was thrilled to have honestly something to put my anxious energy into at that point. And it connected me with a key player in our future, our current Shear Haven journey. And that was a company called Barbicide. They were the leaders in disinfection. They're the leaders in safety in our industry. They're in the blue jar that's on every station of every salon around the world. They're the liquid that we put our combs and our brushes in to keep them clean. And they were really putting out incredible information about how to stay safe during a pandemic, how to clean our instruments properly, which of course we know how to do anyway, but they were reinvigorating our knowledge about how to do this this global pandemic thing. And I was able to gather information from them to then pass on to the state to give them information about how our industry could reopen as quickly as possible. And through that partnership, they had actually just launched their trainings online. They had just scaled their website to be able to reach people in that way, rather than having to do in-person trainings. And it wasn't an immediate light bulb for me, but over time, it occurred to me, maybe this could be a key partner as our legislative efforts had come to a close during 2020. It allowed us to take a breath and figure out how to meet some of the requirements that lawmakers had asked for. So our legislation had been moving through committees. I had been testifying and sharing my personal story as a survivor and, of course, as a beauty professional, and explaining why this was so important and why this additional requirement, which, by the way, was the only requirement, the only continuing education requirement in our state, was important and how it could save lives. And when we came to a halt, we realized that a couple of the things lawmakers had asked for were a quick training, which, of course, we had been doing multi-hour in-person trainings. So I was like, I don't even know how we shrink this into 1 hour. And they wanted it online, which we had no idea how to do. And they wanted it to be free, which that was the part that we knew, okay, even if we can figure out a way to make this less than an hour, even if we could figure out a way, of course, we knew we could film a video and do maybe quarterly webinars or do a video that lives on a website somehow. We knew that we couldn't figure out how to do that at no charge. And that was something they said, we don't want it to cost a single dollar for the beauty professional. We don't want it to be any sort of additional weight that they have to do in order to keep their license. And so that was the part that we had retracted, and we said, okay, we're just going to pass this for people in school. That's something that we could do. We could go into schools, provide the education, wrap it into their hours. We could figure out a way to do that. But through a partnership with Barbicide, they agreed to actually host our training and provide it on their education platform at no charge, which oh my gosh, was the biggest gift. And we ended up, we found $500 and created a simple, concise 20-minute video and wrote a little quiz that went at the end and provided it to Barbicide. They were gracious enough to put it on their website. And Ingrid, overnight, within 3 days, we went from having reached a couple of hundred people in Tennessee, perhaps, which we were thrilled with, to reaching over 5,000 people globally in 3 days. And my mind and my heart were absolutely blown wide open. I could not believe the impact that had. I mean, that people around the world were embracing this education the way that they were. And Barbicide has a very large following globally. They're, of course, very established here in the United States, but they also have distributors. They have a huge amount in the UK and, of course, across Europe, but they have followers all over the world. And they ended up putting out an email blast to their million email addresses and reached people everywhere. And the feedback that started rolling in, the people that were sharing their certificate on social media, just became this grassroots movement. Barbicide's caveat in releasing the training was that they wanted to make sure it was not Tennessee specific. They said, we understand this is a tool that you need, but we want you to provide the resources to every state. And beyond that, we want you to provide international resources. So include hotlines, include resources for people around the globe. And so we were like, oh, okay, of course. We were a little nervous that lawmakers here in Tennessee would be put off by that, but they were not. And so it provided us the resource to check every box that the lawmakers wanted and allowed us to get to the finish line with nearly unanimous support in the Senate, and I believe one no vote in the House in spring of 2021. And so we were able to reach every licensed cosmetologist, barber, esthetician, nail tech, and natural hair braider, as well as everyone in school for all of those industries with domestic violence education.
And that is incredible. I mean, just because I know the numbers are no longer 5,000, but when you take that initial 5,000 and you think those are 5,000 professionals and how many lives those individuals touch beyond, it's like an astronomical amount of people. And that was just the beginning.
It really is. Thinking about how many clients I have on my book, just that I see in rotation over the course of a month, and then multiply that by certainly even 5,000. It's incredible because it's not just the clients that we see behind the chair. It's our coworkers. It's our family members, our friends, friends. We're just so much more aware and able to listen with a different sensitivity, a different amount of compassion and awareness that allows us to support everyone in our lives in a different way.
Absolutely. And, you think if you have a favorite restaurant you go to and you develop any kind of a relationship with the bar staff or the wait staff, you may even pick up on cues from those individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had so many of those stories come back to me. I had one stylist who said that she knew that when she was shopping in her favorite boutique here in Nashville, that one of her friends that she had met that works there was talking about her relationship one day and kind of opening up about things. And she was like, I knew what she was in the middle of. I knew that she was in the early stages of being love bombed and that there was some serious red flags. He was moving way too fast. And she recognized it because of that training, that awareness.
And that awareness is so key because there are so many people. I've gotten messages from a lot of different people of my loved one went through this domestic violent relationship, and I wish that I would have understood the situation more. I could have intervened. I could have reacted possibly different when they started talking to me about this abuse. And there are so many pieces that just stretch along that timeline of abuse of, like you mentioned, the beginning stages of the love bombing and the red flags that are there to the more subtle abuse to the blatant abuse. And those victims need to be heard and they need to be seen. They need to be believed. And even post escape of that relationship, the survivors still need to be seen, heard, and believed. And that healing process is difficult. So to bring an entire industry who touches, like literally touches so many lives,
Yes.
that awareness and then that information that they can just pass on in conversation to others, that may be the only exposure people get to understanding abuse and violence.
Yes. Every single bit of that. I know that because of the long relationships that we build, that I have heard behind the chair with people around me, stylists even get really frustrated. Like, it's frustrating to know that someone who might be kind of in that cycle, who is maybe even leaves but goes back, being able to educate people that it could take up to 7 times on average, so we know it could take many more than 7 times for someone to finally be able to pull themselves out of that relationship successfully. And teaching people about how you need to hold space, you need to be patient, encouraging, but not pushy. Our hope is that we are educating people as much about how not to respond as how to respond in those kinds of situations. And just really open up their hearts and their eyes in a different way, knowing what that may look like.
Yeah, because the response or the inappropriate response holds such weight in what a victim may or may not do. If they're not believed or if they're blamed for what's happening to them, that can lead to them not leaving because they're going to think, what am I going up against here? This person, this individual that I've been going to for 30 years is questioning what I'm doing. How is anyone else going to believe what I'm doing? How am I going to get any support when I leave?
Well, and that feeling of, if they open up, being so exposed, really being gentle with the way that you respond in a way that doesn't, where they don't feel uncomfortable coming back, even if they haven't quite left yet, knowing that you are gently holding that space, that you're a friend, that you're not, that you're there as a support, but you're not being pushy. Our law that we passed does not make us mandatory reporters. And we really emphasize that in the training. That is not your role. Your role is to be aware of the signs so that you can listen effectively, be aware of the resources so that you're able to be that warm referral that can send someone to the therapist or to the expert if given the opportunity. But you don't have to be the therapist. I know that we are kind of therapist.
I was just about to say that.
But we're not trained therapists. We are not the expert. And even the years in this work myself, if I have someone in the chair, I'm very careful to say, I can speak from my own experience. I can speak from what I've gathered by doing these trainings, but I am not the trained professional. And there are incredible professionals out there that are there and are a support. So, yeah, just leading people to them.
So before we get into the future, because that part's really exciting too, you went from owning a salon and being a survivor to jumping into politics. Did you have any past experience with that, or how did you do that?
Oh, no, absolutely zero experience. Um, it's been wild. I'm still kind of in shock that that's even part of my story now. But no, I absolutely would break into a full sweat walking into the Tennessee legislature, just walking into the General Assembly and being like, okay, I'm going to go in and have this meeting and share my story. And yet, I think most of us as survivors that are in a position to share any bit of our story are experience some form of healing in doing so. It feels incredible to be able to give back, and even if we can help one person through that really incredibly hard process that we went through, that really difficult season, it kind of it's healing. It feels incredible to be able to give back in that way. So I pushed through discomfort and just kind of put one foot in front of the other. And uh, it felt like the direction that I was being nudged in. So I just kind of leaned into it. But no, learning, I still know nothing. I just am showing up wherever I can be useful.
I still know nothing. So what I was going to comment is I have found that every time a survivor shares part of their story, it's almost like a little bit of a weight that they're able to take off of themselves. And then in the same respect, this shame that all of us at some point did carry or still carry, the amounts of shame. It's not our shame to have. It's should not be anything to do with us. But I think also by hearing others' stories, it releases some of your own shame too. So it is so important.
1000%. That's so true. Yes, it was very hard at first. Of course, I had shared my story with people that I was close with, and it was fairly public because I'm a salon owner. I was a business owner at the time that I was going through it. So a lot of people kind of walked through the season with me, but it is very difficult to open up and lean into and kind of revisit that part of it. And yet so rewarding to, well, first of all, I'm able to share in a different way because my abuser's no longer here. And I know there's a lot of people that it's not that they wouldn't love to share a little bit more, but maybe they don't feel safe. And that is a privilege that I'm able to kind of step fully into for that reason. I wish that, of course, that's not the path that I wish life had led through. I would never have said this is how I want it to turn out. But because of what is, I'm able to step more fully into that advocate role from that place. And I'm deeply grateful that I'm able to do that on behalf of people that can't, who have been able to share their story with me through this training. And I found that so many of us who are survivors, even though there are very distinctly different details in all of our stories, there's also a lot of similarity. And so while my story is unique, it's not unique. There's the cycle of power and control that is at the center of every story. There's the manipulation, the fear, the isolation that I experience that I know also speaks to what so many others have been through and are still in. And I'm deeply fueled by my kids' generation, looking at my beautiful babies and their beautiful friends and just hoping that by reaching so many people, especially in cosmetology school and barber school, that are being educated in a way that our generation was not, about what the signs are, how to respond, how to spot it early, that potentially we are reaching people that will not need the education in the same way that we did, because they will not walk as deeply into the relationship as I did, as so many did and do. And so, but so much of it is that our generation didn't know. We knew about the physical signs of abuse, but they didn't educate us about the non-physical, the emotional, the verbal, the financial abuse. And I know that there's so much power in education, because education is ultimately what saved my life, I believe. It was someone that I was close to that recognized that I was in an abusive relationship and put the power of that word into that context for me. I knew that I was in a hard relationship. I knew that I was in a bad relationship. I knew that I had a toxic relationship. But the word abuse, having someone say, this isn't just a bad relationship, this is an abusive relationship, that is ultimately what fueled my desire to find out more about what that was and do the research that then allowed me to safety plan, that then allowed me to be more aware as I was leaving about what I was experiencing as I was. To have context to that was so important. And I hope that by providing education, that will do the same for others.
I believe it will. And I think that realization, or somebody telling you, or you're finally willing to admit it or recognize it yourself, of this is abuse, that begins that transition from I'm a victim of abuse to becoming the survivor of abuse.
Yes.
And that's super powerful to be able to educate so many individuals to help other individuals understand that process. Okay. So this is like all the things that you've already accomplished, but what's on the horizon?
Well, so there's a lot of things on the horizon. About 2 years ago, we are still partners with Barbicide, but we actually ended up launching our own website. So we now have shearhaventraining.org, which has our training not only in English, but we were able to launch Spanish and Vietnamese as well, to be able to more effectively reach a broader part of our community and our world. We still want many more languages. So I hope that this time next year we have more to add. But we have downloadable resources on our website. So there's printable resources that people can put in their changing area or their bathroom, or little flyers, one pagers that they can put in their waiting room to give nonverbal cues to people in their space, to be able to say, here you are in a safe space. And also add that additional layer of here's the hotline if someone wanted to just take a picture of the QR code. Of course, past Salon, Tennessee, which is about at its completion. Beauty professionals in our industry had 2 renewal cycles, which is ultimately 4 years. Each renewal cycle is 2 years, to receive up to an hour of domestic violence training. Ours is 20 minutes. It's free and online. But if someone wanted to go and take an in-person training, as long as it's recognized by the Tennessee Coalition Against Domestic Violence, it's great for that requirement. And we are also working on federal legislation. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go with our YWCA team up to DC and present at their national conference. And the day before we presented, we had a day on the Hill. and we were able to meet with all of our U.S. representatives and senators. And we met with one of the staff from Senator Blackburn's team, who really connected with what we were doing. He has a sister who's a beauty professional here in Tennessee, and he heard that we had passed this legislation here at the state level and said, you know what, I think that there might be, I know the senator is going to connect with this, and there might be something at the federal level that we could do. And we ended up, fast forward, meeting with them again, and ended up hearing, yes, the senator has found a way. We are going to, basically present this bipartisan legislation. It's Senator Blackburn and Senator Duckworth from Illinois. We have a lot of other Senate co-sponsors who are incredible that have joined the mission. And it's a bill that will incentivize states to pass laws like we did in Tennessee and Illinois. Arkansas also has a requirement, and it would provide stop grant funding to each state after they pass the law. And so it can be it's not a one size fits all. Our bill is very different than Illinois', which is very different than Arkansas's, but all of us have our own unique requirements. And so it basically would incentivize states to do what we did here. And it's been an incredible effort. It's also been introduced in the House. It's Representative Laura Lee from Florida and Representative Dingell from Michigan. And we've been up to DC, and we've been talking to lawmakers and presenting the case for why this is so important. And my hope is that we will eventually get to the finish line. There's been great momentum, and it's exciting to see a bipartisan effort in today's world, which is so incredibly split, and we're so polarized about so many things. But to see the effort and the heart for how important it is to do things differently, and how many outside the box opportunities there could be to address this incredibly hard issue. And so yes, to your point, my advocate hat has become a little more sharpened than it was back in the day. It's exciting. It's incredible. And we've actually spoken with people in other states that have expressed interest. We hope to see legislation introduced in Kentucky at the beginning of the year next year. And we've had some amazing interest in Montana, in South Carolina, and truly states all over the place. We've had many, many YWs express interest, and even individuals that just have a heart for domestic violence awareness, that are not connected with the YW, but that have reached out saying, this is something that we would love to see passed in our state. And so I'm hoping that there is incredible movement at that level. And so truly, if anyone's listening and wants to reach out, we would love to talk. I hope that it's a snowball of states. And we have created a playbook that is a very concise step-by-step that hopefully can help guide anyone who wants to pass legislation like this.
This is insane. This is just absolutely insane. So we talked about 5,000 before. Do you have an approximation of the current amount of numbers?
We have now reached over 160,000 people in over 100 countries with domestic violence education. And that doesn't even seem real to me. And I know that's enormous. And yet, if you look at the numbers of beauty professionals around the world, around just in the States, but certainly around the world, I know that this is the tip of the iceberg. And my hope is that just like I hope that it snowballs with states. I hope that there just continues to double and triple the numbers of beauty professionals we've reached. Let me also say that it was very important to us that even if you're not a beauty professional, that you find the training helpful. And I've had my doctor has taken it. She said she felt like it was more concise, more helpful for her than even the training that she received in her official training. So she has now encouraged her staff to take it. I've had teachers take it, again, attorneys, physical therapists, personal trainers, people in all different industries of healthcare to you name it, who just have this heart and this curiosity for it, that have received this education and are welcome to take it. So if you want to find it, you can just go to shearhaventraining.org and register. It's a quick 20-minute training followed by a quick quiz. And it's incredible if you feel led to share your certificate and encourage people in your community to also take it. Share it with your beauty professional. Share it with your best friend. Have them continue to spread the word. We haven't had a lot of, let me just say, this is also not unique in the nonprofit world, but we haven't necessarily had dedicated funding to pour into it to really properly market it necessarily. So a lot of our spread has just been word of mouth and, various news clips or segments that we've had that have gone out that have then encouraged people to go and take the training. So every single share makes a difference.
So I got actual chills when you said those numbers. And then, even just saying that's not even the tip of the iceberg, that's just, it's so exciting. I teared up a little bit. I'm tearing up over too many things lately, but that's so cool. And I was about to ask if this was a beauty professional specific training. So that is very exciting that anyone can go in. It makes me, as a healthcare professional myself, it is a little, and I'm not saying it's disheartening because your doctor didn't get the appropriate training, but it is disheartening because I've had the training that I've received on domestic violence, I can say is subpar. And you would think that healthcare professionals should have the gold standard of education on this and law enforcement and law enforcement officers and other first responders. But those are all amazing people that can go check this out. 20 minutes is nothing.
It's nothing. And there are a couple of, I feel like what we do, of course, we go into some of the physical signs that people can spot, but a lot of it is the more covert signs that as a human being with another human being, your spidey sense might go off with. But without the official education, you may not quite know what it is. And so we really speak into behind the chair. Yes, you can see things like bruising or someone who comes in maybe with inappropriate amounts of clothing for the time of year. Maybe they're covering bruises or hair that's been pulled because, of course, we're on top of people's heads. We're in that realm. We can see very closely the physical signs, but some of the less visible signs like increased cancellations, or sudden frequent cancellations from the person that you've seen consistently for years, that it's out of character, or maybe isolation from some of their close friends and family. When you sit down and have those conversations and they're very social and they're out with their best friends, quite a bit. We all know that there might be times that with a new relationship, you're extra cozy with someone for a period. But if someone's truly pulling back from their best friends or their close family members, that, of course, would be a sign. And there's a lot of the non-physical cues that we try to really shine a spotlight on, that we, yes, we might be in a unique position to spot because of those relationships that we build.
I love all of this. I mean, I am so excited about all of this. Do you think there's anything that we missed? Any points that we missed at all?
Well, yes. I was approached about a year ago by a woman who, her name is Julie Smolinski, and she reached out saying that her daughters are about to launch a hair care brand called Bird Beauty that is incredible. They are teenage girls that want to shine a spotlight on teen dating violence and domestic violence awareness, which, as I touched on with my kids' generation, is my heart. I'm so touched to see young people that are that passionate about this issue. And so each shampoo and conditioner says this shampoo could save a life. This conditioner could save a life. And on the back of it, it has the QR code to our training. And they are really diving in, opening up conversations through their friends, their followers, to really expose that hidden pandemic of domestic violence. And seeing change makers in the community like that absolutely just set me on fire. Like, I'm so excited to see that there is a movement like that. And their mom is a powerhouse of her own. She's the CEO of a company called Lifeway. She started a nonprofit called Test Kit 400 that actually encourages states to process test kits for rape, and has passed legislation in states that are now putting pressure on that system to move it on forward. And I hope that through unique partnerships like that, through movements like that, that we will just continue to open up even deeper conversations in segments of our population that can truly be difference makers.
And so, Susanne, you did it again. I got chills and tears again. So what was the name of the girls' project again?
It's called Bird Beauty, BURD.
I love this.
Please go follow them and order your delicious shampoo and conditioner, because every single bit of it, every sale is going to ultimately support Shear Haven and our initiative, and help us provide even more resources. We will always keep our training free, so it will always be a free resource for anyone who needs it.
Okay. And you mentioned it already, but how do people get in touch with you or the organization?
We will link all of our social media handles at the end of this, and there's an email link on our website if anyone ever needs to get in touch with me. We're a very small but mighty group of Shear Haveners, myself and a couple of others. So absolutely do not hesitate to reach out. And of course, shearhaventraining.org is our website. And I would love for anyone to share it with anyone who they think it could impact.
Perfect. And I would say that mighty is probably an understatement. You guys are quite the powerhouse. You have accomplished so much in such crazy times. COVID, government shutdowns. You guys are still trucking. This is amazing.
Well, fingers crossed we can get to a couple of finish lines before maybe we can do a big celebration podcast in a couple of years with some big news.
Yes, I would love that. Okay, so before we wrap up and close, are there any words of encouragement or wisdom, specific words of encouragement or wisdom you would like to leave with listeners today?
Well, around this topic, likely anyone who's listening to this podcast has a heart for domestic violence awareness. And it's a topic that can feel, it's heavy, it's daunting. And I just want to say that there's so much power in just holding space for people and being a compassionate friend, that you never know how one small conversation could change a life. And I know that in my own life, it was that one conversation with someone that I deeply trusted that was the change maker that ultimately led me to this path, to a beautiful life on the other side. And so, just one foot in front of the other, be a friend.
Thank you so much, Susanne. This was an amazing episode. You are doing so much. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thank you again, Susanne, for joining me today. And thank you, warriors, for listening. I have included the links Susanne was referring to, as well as her 1 in 3 profile, in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong. And wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone.
Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1 in 3 podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.